Apparently, the humans are dabbling in forbidden research that could destroy the world. It's called Seraph of the End, and our protagonist Yūichiro Hyakuya is the result of this forbidden research. Now, Shinoa and Guden are sparring with each other when she confronts him about the death of his sister, Mahiru. She reminds him about how her sister had feelings for him, and then also asks him about his plans for Yūichiro. Much to her surprise, Guden simply states that he killed Mahiru and now her soul resides in his arm. This catches her off guard, and their confrontation ends there. She then goes to the library to find Yūichiro reading about the vampires. She notices that he was reading about turning humans into vampires, likely trying to figure out what happened to his brother, Michaela, and what he can do for him going forward. Shinoa sits down in front of him and mentions whatever she knows about it. Your average vampire doesn't have the power to turn humans into vampires. This means he was chosen by a noble. Little do they know, the one who turned him into a vampire was the queen herself. She doesn't know how to turn a vampire back into a human though. Nobody does. Suddenly there's an announcement that Yūichiro is summoned by Kureto Hiragi. Kureto is the leader of the Hiragi family, which is the most powerful family in Japan, and for the sake of context, Shinoa is a member of that family. That's why she tells him to be careful. Her family can be a bit too much. Now as Yūichiro is on his way, he sees Guden. He casually reminds her boy that he must not forget to prioritize his friends, which goes without saying, of course. So it's strange he mentions that. He also tells Yūichiro that he is his comrade, albeit in a pretty roundabout way. When Yūichiro gets to the head office, he sees Mitsuba. Apparently, she had received a promotion, even though she was basically useless in the recent fiasco. Her words, not mine. Anyway, when Yūichiro enters the room, he sees a vampire. Without thinking, he instantly cuts him down. That's when the lights come back and Kureto Hiragi shows himself. He is the Lieutenant General of the Japanese Imperial Army as well. Together with him, there is a guy named Shinya Hiragi and his personal aide, Ae Sangyu. Kureto tells Yoriichi that the vampire was a test to see if he's a traitor or not, because for what it's worth, there is a traitor on the human side. Both Kureto and Shinya test Yoriichi's abilities, but he loses to both of them. In Shinya's words, he is simple-minded, which makes him easy to defeat in hand-to-hand combat. Alright, so it seems they still think Yūichiro might be a spy, so they show him Yūichi and Shiho, who are both tied up and behind a glass door. General Kureto tells Yūichiro that if he doesn't comply, his friends will be harmed. Sure enough, Yūichiro tells them that he will answer any questions they have, truthfully, but just let his friends go. Now, the reason Kureto is so suspicious of Yūichiro, Yūichi, and Shiho is because there is no formal data on their pasts. The general says that Yūichiro was in the vampire facility. One day, he and his family tried to escape. However, everyone but him were killed by the vampires. Is this true, he asks. Yūichiro affirms. The general then says that he was saved by Guden and Guden took him in. But why did Guden take him in? Why does he have the last name Hyakuya? Yūichiro simply replies that Hyakuya was the name of the orphanage he used to live in. This is where General Kureto reveals that back then, Hyakuya was the most influential spellcaster in all of Japan. Their orphanages were all over the country, and they would use the orphans for human experimentation. He also adds that Yūichiro was most likely one of their guinea pigs. Guden knows this, and that's why he's using him for his own purposes. At least that's what Kureto Hiragi tells Yūichiro. He then asks Yūichiro to join him instead. Yūichiro tells him to let go of his friends, and then declares that Guden would never be resorted to something like that. Once this is over, Yūichiro meets Guden again and asks him about it. He asks if the reason he was saved is because he is part of some experimentation. And well, Guden affirms, but it's not like Yūichiro is mad. After all, if he hadn't been saved, he would have simply died. So he asks him that if he needs him, he must also need his brother, so he should help him save Michaela from the vampires. While Yūichiro, Yūichi, Shiho, Shinoa, and Mitsuba listen. Guden tells him that they are like a family, so of course he will help him get his family back. And that means it's training time. Speaking of Michaela, he still refuses to drink human blood. A boy shows up who asks Farid if he let him drink his blood, would that make things easier for his family? Farid grabs him by the throat and tells Michaela to drink his blood, but Michaela makes Farid let go of the boy. Farid then leaves after telling Michaela to attend tomorrow's High Noble Assembly. Going back to Yūichiro and the gang, he is taking an intimate look at his sword, trying to figure out how to get rid of his skill issue. Shinoa mentions that if they use their blood, they can effectively increase their weapon's demonic power. Subsequently, monsters which are referred to as 4 Horsemen of John show up. There are 5 of them. But Yuichiro manifests his cursed weapons demon and epically kills them all with a single attack. This excites Yuichiro, so he follows Shinoa's direction and gives his blood to the weapon. Suddenly his eyes go red, and he finds himself in an illusion. His father is there and he's trying to kill him with a knife. It's horrifying. Still, Yuichiro knows that this is all but an illusion, so he manages to regain control relatively quickly. He then ends up in front of Ashurama and gets straight to the point. He states that if Ashurama can give him more power, he will be friends with him. This surprises Ashurama, but he was already vibing with Yuichiro even before, so it's all cool. On the other hand, Shiho also gave his weapon his blood, and he was in an illusion. There is his sister, and everyone, including Yuichiro, wants to get rid of her because of her incurable disease. As you may expect, it doesn't take long before our boy realizes that it's all an illusion. He stabs himself and breaks free. Both Yuichiro and Shiho manage to get power-ups. They decide to duke it out and see how strong they have gotten. Later, while Mitsuba and Shinoa are in the library, they check the computer and realize that there are no records of Yuichiro, Shiho, and Yoichi. Someone has wiped out their data, and Shinoa knows that it was Guden. Just what the hell is he plotting, they wonder. In the morning, there is a letter delivered by a pigeon in a destroyed territory. Aoi takes it to Kureto. Meanwhile, the boys realize that Shinoa and Mitsuba can't cook. Shiho takes over and teaches them how to make an omelet. During breakfast, Shinoa states that they have to talk about how Yuichiro lost control and if Guren is actually trustworthy. Subsequently, Kureto meets Guden in a place where 3 vampires are all tied up outside. He tells Guden to kill the captives, but Guden declines. He knows that Kureto won't do anything to him because he is still useful. Next, Kureto asks him how he managed to find Yuichiro, Shiho, and Yoichi, but the guy replies that it was just luck. He isn't intimidated by Kureto, not even in the slightest. Anyways, Kureto then goes straight to the point. The plan is to eradicate all the empires in Japan and make sure the Japanese Imperial Demon Army reigns supreme. To that end, he tells Guden to head to Nagoya with 100 troops. He will have to kill the 10 vampire nobles who currently reside there, while Kureto himself will prepare for the final battle. Going back to the gang, Yuichiro feels guilty for hurting Shinoa when he lost control, but they are all cool and they will help each other bring their families back together. After all, they are a family themselves. Speaking of family members, let's go back to Michaela. He was going mad with thirst since he hadn't drank any of the queen's blood in a while, and so when he enters her throne room, he immediately forces himself onto her and drinks her blood. The guy was too dehydrated at this point. When he calms down, she tells him that she will protect both him and Yuichiro. As it turns out, she needs them both, and for the time being she tells him to not fall into the hands of either the humans or the vampires. Then there is Guden. He is planning for the battle in Nagoya. Shinoa shows up and updates him on the progress Yuichiro and Shiho made during the training, and he then tells her to prepare for another mission. Moving on, we see Michaela ready to join the other vampires in Nagoya, while General Kureto oversees a forbidden experiment involving a young girl. Her name is Mirai as well. She's Shiho's sister. Next, Yuichiro and the gang are traveling to the Ebina Rest in a jeep. They come across several monsters, aka 4 horsemen of John, on the way. Yuichiro gets off the jeep and defeats them, but the others, especially Shinoa, decide to be silly. They leave him behind. He's obviously not pleased by this. Their destination is a long way ahead. As for where they are heading, it's where Guden is supposed to give a speech. We see Shinoa arrive there in a literal Lamborghini. What's going on? I thought it was supposed to be a post-apocalyptic setting. Why is he here though? It's to help. He tells Guden that 100 soldiers won't be enough to take down 10 vampire nobles. Going back to the gang, they go and pick Yuichiro up. It was supposed to be a silly little prank anyway, but it did cost them time though. Time that they weren't supposed to waste. When they finally arrive, literally everybody is already there. Of course, they try to hide in the back to avoid getting noticed, but Guden notices them and absolutely humiliates them for not taking this seriously. So much so that Shinoa was almost going to tear up. Yuichiro steps up and takes the blame instead. He decides to be a gentleman. Later, Guden calls him, and even though he was expecting to be scolded again, turns out that wasn't the case. Guden applauds him for taking all the blame himself, but he does tie him up over a fire. The entire gang then goes up against Guden, Shinya, and a strong lady named Mito Jujo. It's punishment for sending Yuichiro to him alone and also training, if you will. They try to strategize and take a carefully planned approach, but even so they are defeated. Makoko Narumi, who was also there, comments that the gang didn't have enough teamwork and discipline. He also tells Guden that they are all just kids, so they will be a liability on the battlefield. Be that as it may, Guden assigns Shinoa's squad to Narumi and makes him oversee them. Narumi is not so keen about this, but hey, whatever. Shinoa then apologizes to the gang for what happened, the humiliation they suffered, and how the reason they lost was because of her own incompetence as a leader. But of course, none of them hold it against her. Going back to Michaela, he is with vampire nobles, and they are taking children to Nagoya for the vampires. In the middle of this, he goes off the deep end and forces himself on a kid. Although he managed to control himself before the FBI opened up. FBI, open up! He finally realized that if he doesn't drink human blood soon, he will lose his sense of self. Alright, so Narumi explains that their mission is to kill the 15th progenitor named Lukal Wesker. Once there, Yoichi prepares to snipe the noble from a safe distance, while everyone else waits and stays put. The noble himself is having a conversation with his servant about whether they should follow Krul or not. When Yoichi finally snipes, he somehow manages to sense it and uses his servant as a shield to safeguard himself. Yuichiro immediately enters the chat along with everyone else. They attack him, but then again, it's a vampire noble. He is not going to go down easily. They work together and bind him, but even so, he just severs his arm. However, Shiho penetrates his severed arm with his sword and provokes the guy. This allows Yuichiro to land a fatal blow, but when they are going to finish him off, the noble commits death. He says that he'd rather kill himself than be killed by humans. Guden, on the other hand, kills the 19th progenitor named Mel Stefano, but then a soldier from another group comes to him. He explains that they failed their mission and that the rest of the group has been captured by vampires. They are being held hostage at Nagoya City Hall, and yes, they are also being killed. The soldier passes away in Guden's arms. He dies a happy man because he was able to fight alongside Guden. Guden knows that it's all a trap, but he can't just abandon those soldiers, and so he prepares to go save them. Their target is the alleged 13th progenitor in the Nagoya City Hall. We're all familiar with him. His name is Crowley Usford. At the Nagoya City Hall, Crowley, Chess, and Horn talk about the possibility that there might be a traitor among them who has been leaking information to the nobles. Narumi and Shinoa's squad regroup with Guren's squad. He needs them to take on Crowley. Aiko Aihara's squad has also supposed to regroup with them, but when she shows up, she explains that although they completed their mission, she has lost 8 soldiers. She blames herself, but Guden tells her to take it easy. He puts her on guard duty and goes ahead with just his squad, Narumi's squad, and of course Shinoa's squad. Though after Guden and the others leave, vampire helicopters arrive. She shoots one of them with the vampire inside, immediately jumping out. One of them is Michaela. He grabs her throat and asks her about Yūichiro Hyakuya. Well, considering how the situation was hopeless, she says a code which leads to all the other soldiers in the area committing die by taking poison pills. Naturally, she was going to do the same, but Michaela keeps her from doing so. Still, she pretends to be dead, while the vampires start talking about their next course of action. When they are distracted, she pulls her weapon to Michaela's throat and tells him that Yūichiro has gone to City Hall, and if the other vampires find out, his brother is in grave danger. This leads to Michaela and Aihara fooling others by revealing fake information and fake locations. That's where Lacus and Renee, the other 2 vampires, go. Once the act is over, she asks Michaela to just kill her, but he spares her. However, when the other 2 vampires ask him to bring her along, he immediately kills her. It's better to have a quick death than getting further tortured by the vampires, after all. Michaela doesn't stop with his deception here, though. He literally tells them that he can't trust the information the woman gave them, and states that he will go to the city hall with 5 vampires. Little do they know, he is only looking for Yūichiro. Going back to Guden and the rest of the squad, they are now in enemy territory. Guden is observing the building from a safe distance using binoculars. Yūichiro comments that their first priority should be saving the hostages, but then again it might be a trap. Guden even mentions that if things don't go their way, they will have to abandon the hostages. For the moment, Guden and his squad will distract the vampires together with Shinya, while Shinoa and Narumi's squads will focus on saving the hostages. That's the plan. The time limit is 5 minutes. That's when they will leave and rendezvous at the Nagoya airport. Since Yūichiro has already located Crowley, he is ordered to shoot, but the same attack that was going to be fatal for the 15th progenitor does nothing to Crowley. The battle starts. Norito Goshi from Guren's squad uses his illusion spell to make it seem like there is a stupid number of soldiers who have come to attack them. Guren and Shinya, two of the strongest men, enter the building and attack Crowley. But as strong as they are, Crowley easily overpowers and defeats them. Yūichiro wants to go and help them after some persistence. Shinoa gives him the green light. Back to Guren and Shinya, they are in enemy territory. They try their best to escape, but Crowley and the two stunning vampire ladies with him are too much for them to handle. When they try to run through the hallway, Crowley lands a fatal blow on Guren. He tells Shinya to escape and lead the others because it seems it's already over for him. However, Yūichiro pops up from the floor and attacks Crowley before he could land the final blow on Guren. It's not just him either. The entire Shinoa squad is here. They try their best to rescue Guren, but against Crowley and his girls, it wasn't enough. Shinoa orders the squad to retreat, and as much as Yūichiro doesn't like that idea, Guren insists. Though before the squad retreats, Yūichiro recalls that he fought Crowley back in Shinjuku. Next, we see Guren's own squad attempts to rescue him, but while they succeed in retrieving Shinya, he gives them the same orders to retreat without him. And so his squad retreats, and Norito uses his illusion magic to keep them from getting chased. Elsewhere, we see Kureto in a heated conversation with his brother, Seishiro Hiragi. He wants to know why Kureto isn't following his father's orders, and well, Kureto just orders his brother to be imprisoned until he returns, and his aide, Aoi, eliminates Seishiro's soldiers. Meanwhile, Yūichiro can't contain himself. Guren is like family to him. He isn't just going to let him die like that, and so he decides to go and save him, even if he has to do it all alone. And how exactly is he planning on doing that? Well, even though Shinoa tries to stop him, he consumes more than one pill. He takes 2 of them. And as we know from what Hiragi said, any more than 1 pill could lead to instant death. Yūichiro starts vomiting blood. His eye sockets bleed out. His organs are in jeopardy and he collapses. Subsequently, Michaela also reaches the city hall. He kills the 5 vampires he took with him and starts searching for his brother. We see Kureto again. He asks Aoi if there have been any reports from Guren, and then tells everyone to speed things up. The Moon Demon Company can only buy them so much time after all. So what happened to Yūichiro? He finds himself in front of Asuramaru again. Like always, he asks him for more powers. He needs them to save Guren after all, but he is not in the mood. In fact, he was thinking about taking full control of Yūichiro's body. He also explains that right now Yūichiro may not be dead, but he is not alive either. The trumpet inside of him, the power of angels to be more precise, are what's keeping him in that state. Having said this, Asuramaru also tells Yūichiro to not approach the trumpet, which happens to be behind him. Why should he not approach the trumpet? It's because the angels can sometimes be worse than devils. Still, he starts approaching the trumpet almost as if he is hypnotized by its presence. Asuramaru stops him from doing so and also decides to give him more powers. Only for 3 minutes though. Just like that, Yūichiro wakes up and immediately dashes straight to where Guren is. You can consider Shinoa and the others shocked. He shows up while Guren is being interrogated. Crowley is impressed by Yūichiro's sudden power increase, but it's still not enough. This causes him to ask Asuramaru for even more power. Asamaru obliges, but Yūichiro ends up turning into half demon, half human. But it was not good. Yūichiro was about to be possessed by Asuramaru. Conveniently, Shisa appears, stuffs Yūichiro in his coffin and bails. Meanwhile, Michaela confronts the Moon Demon Company. The odds were against him, but when he sees Yūichiro being carried by Shisa, he goes insane and starts charging like a madman. All he wants is his brother back. However, Michaela was cornered. It got to a point where Shinya was in a position to kill him, but Shinoa and the others intervene and tell Michaela to escape with Yūichiro. This shocks him. Michaela didn't know his brother still had such strong bonds. Shinoa and the others hold off the Moon Demon Company, and she also tells Michaela that they will meet at the airport later. And so Michaela picks up Yūichiro and flees. One of the soldiers tries attacking Shinoa, but Narumi stops him. They have bigger problems to deal with. The vampire nobles are coming, and the best course of action at the moment is to retreat from the battlefield. Narumi himself is left utterly appalled when his fellows start getting killed, but Shinya reminds him that they have to retreat. Subsequently, Michaela is carrying Yūichiro. He is tired and thirsty, so when he sees a scared kid, he follows him into a convenience store and was about to drink his blood, but he stopped. He stopped because the kid called him a monster. He then drags Yūichiro inside the convenience store to hide from both humans and vampires. As for Yūichiro, he's in the other dimension with Asura Maru. He asks him about what happened after he lost consciousness, but of course he can only see through his eyes, so he does not have any information either. But he does mention that someone is there, and he is calling him family. When Yūichiro wakes up in the convenience store, he notices Michaela. At this point, Michaela was too far gone. He needed blood, so much so that he lost sense of everything. He attacks Yūichiro, but Yūichiro understands, and even though Michaela was strictly against it, he convinces his brother to drink blood. This finally turns Michaela's eyes from the color blue to red. He becomes a real vampire. From this point onwards, he won't age either. The two brothers are then taking a walk outside, talking about things. Michaela mentions how his friends saved him, and Yūichiro ends up convincing him to help save his friends, now that Michaela has told him what's going on. They get in a jeep and start driving toward the airport. At the airport, we see Shinoa's squad, as well as the rest of the Moon Demon Company. They are all heaving, but much to their dismay, there is no one there to save them. No vehicles, no helicopters, nothing. Going back to the brothers, Michaela starts telling Yūichiro about Seraph of the End, the experiment that was conducted on him, and why both the humans and the vampires want him. He wants Yūichiro to run away with him to somewhere far away, a place where neither the vampires nor the humans can catch him, a place called Vinland. Nah, I'm just kidding, guys. He does ask him to run away though, and Yūichiro tells him that it's a good idea, but he should consult his friends about it too. Now, we see several aircrafts flying towards Nagoya Airport. Inside one of them, we see Kureto Hiragi in a room with his assistant Aoi and Mirai, the girl they have been experimenting upon. She is in an unimaginable amount of pain. Back at the airport, everyone is freaking out. The vampires are closing in on them, but they have no way to escape. There's tension. Everyone is anxious. And as you can expect, one of them, Rika from Narumi's squad, slaps Shinoa straight on the face. In her mind, Shinoa and her squad betrayed the Moon Demon Company by helping a vampire, which is actually not wrong. Shiho and the others want to step in, but Shinoa tells them to stay put. Shortly after, Narumi also joins. He is against Shinoa and the others for what they did, especially since so many people were dying left and right. Shinya tells all of them to knock it off, and then also reveals that this mission was actually planned by Kureto, and not Guden. This is where the soldiers start abandoning the mission and shift their priority to rescue Guden. Speaking of Guden, he is now being bullied by another vampire, but the man stays strong. Ferid is having a conversation with Crowley about how Guden must have been a half-demon. Remember Mahiru, Shinoa's sister and Guden's lover? Well, to be fair, she was also Shinya's fiancée. But let's just say that Guden is then seen in the other dimension. He's lying in her lap. For reasons unknown to us at this point in the story, she is a demon, and she decides to give Guden her powers. When Guden wakes up again, his eyes are red, and he immediately kills the vampire who was bullying him. Now, Curl, the queen, was also there. She takes on Guden, and the way she acts hints that Mahiru must have made a deal with the queen in the past. And when they are close enough, Guden tells her that Seraph of the End experiment would take place at the airport. Kureto arrives at the airport, pulls out a weapon of mass slaughter, and just straight up starts killing the Moon Demon Army's soldiers. Narumi confronts him, of course. He does, but Kureto remains unhinged. In my opinion, this is just a small sacrifice. A small price to pay for salvation, eh? The soldiers who try to retreat are stopped by vampires who have already arrived. Out of the relevant characters, only Shinoa's squad, Makoto, Narumi, and Guden's squad are still alive. Yūichiro and Michaela are also there by now. Guren's squad and Shinya's help Shinoa's squad. Yūichiro and Michaela escape. But in the middle of all of this, Yūichiro ends up running into Guden. He is glad that Yūichiro is still alive, and Yūichiro is also pleased to see him. However, he suddenly gets closer and swings down his sword at our boy. Michaela blocks his strike. Both of them fight, but this version of Guden is strong enough to overpower Michaela. Kureto then gives the go-ahead to execute their plan. He tells Yūichiro that Seraph of the End is involved in this, but then catches everyone off guard by attacking both humans and vampires. He just lets his sword drain his blood and starts attacking everyone. Why is he doing this? To allow Kureto's weapon to suck their blood. The reason is because Kureto's weapon needs blood, and because Guren injures so many humans and vampires, the weapon is able to start sucking their blood without any complications. This is where Mirai's container implodes, and all according to Kureto's plan. The demon of destruction named Abaddon possesses her. But that's not all. She also blows the trumpet. The scene at the battlefield immediately takes a dark, grim shift for worse. Shiho obviously notices that the girl in the sky is his little sister, and you bet he's mad. He rushes toward her, but Guren pulls up and stabs him. Yūichiro and Michaela then attack Guren for what he did, but when Yūichiro gets a good look at Guren's eyes, he realizes that the guy is hurting from all of this too. Just what the hell is going on? As more and more chaos ensues, because of the demon of destruction, Yūichiro is left perplexed. What should he do? What can he do? Michaela tells him to run with his friends, but that's no solution, is it? It's cool, Yūichiro knows what he's doing. He picks up his sword and stabs himself. As I said, he knows what he's doing. He finds himself in Asuramaru's den once again. He walks toward the trumpet and picks it up. Even though Asuramaru warns him again, he may very well lose his humanity. But that's a risk Yūichiro is willing to take. He blows the trumpet just like Mirai blew the trumpet. The one he blew was the second trumpet, and it immediately turned him into the King of Salt. He immediately neutralizes the battle by turning the demon of destruction into salt. Kureto fights him because he doesn't want Yūichiro to mess up his plans, and in the middle of all of this, Asuramaru knocks him out. He does that because otherwise Yūichiro would have been too far gone. This leads to everyone trying to capture him. The Queen and Michaela try to get him before the humans, but they are stopped by Crowley and Ferret, who manage to defeat the Queen, and so the Queen tells Michaela to run. Ferret declares her a traitor and takes command of the battle. Finally, Michaela carries Yūichiro and escapes the battlefield together with Makoto and the Shinoa squad. They stay hidden from both the vampires and the humans for the next 4 months, and then start planning how to go about saving Shiho's sister, Mirai. That's it, guys. That's where the story of the Owari no Seraph anime ends. The manga is still ongoing, but it has been 8 years since the last anime season. I'd say if you want to know what happens next, it's better to just stop waiting and read the manga. Though as for the story so far, what do you think? Let's talk about it in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel if you want more of these comprehensive yet personalized anime recaps. And feel free to tell us which anime would you like to see recapped next.